Welcome to Carbon Connects, looking at the challenges pharma has faced, it currently is facing, and what it will be facing in the future.
Nice to meet you again. I'm Alyssa Fenoglio. I am the Global Head of Digital Commercial at Teva. What is your team strategy, your brand strategy, your company strategy? What is your purpose? That's the guiding light for all of this. We've got to have a curious mindset to dig into the data to understand what's happening. Now, AI can help us with that.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Carbon Connects with myself, Henry Regan. I'm here with Alyssa. Hello.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too. Can you tell me a little bit more about yourself and your role as well to start off with?
Sure. So nice to meet you again. I'm Alyssa Fenoglio. I am the Global Head of Digital Commercial at Teva. And what that entails is actually our purpose is to empower our people to build long-lasting, sustainable, and trusting relationships with our customers and long-lasting businesses for today and tomorrow.
Great. And tell me a little bit about how you got to that position as well. You've obviously had a diverse history coming up to this point in terms of your professional career. Tell me a bit more about that.
Sure. You know, Henry, I'm definitely someone who's driven by learning and growth. So that's what's prompted a lot of my moves. And I think early on, I started out in pharmaceutical sales at Alcon, carried the bag, was a sales trainer, loved that interaction of business and science and that intersection. And I wanted to learn more. So after I got my MBA, I moved into marketing. I also expanded into medical devices at Medtronic. So I wanted to continue to broaden myself, both functionally and also industry-wise. At Medtronic, I fell in love with marketing. I loved that it was strategic. It was working with R&D on new products. It was working with the field sales. It was working with KOLs. And then I wanted to go learn marketing from the best. So I went to P&G. So I took a very non-traditional move to P&G, which was wild, but completely worth it because I learned there that, marketing is scientific. Everything we do is an experiment. There's a hypothesis, you test, you learn, and you move on to what's next. And a lot of that's driven by data. That brings us into kind of the digital transformation roles I've had in recent years. At Sanofi, leading omnichannel and marketing excellence transformation. And of course now at Teva, now that I'm leading our digital commercial transformation, as well as transformation in Europe.
And how are you bringing that experience to your role now?
So every role is a unique, bespoke application for me. So I love that I can pull from all these different experiences that I've had geographically in emerging markets and Europe and the US, of course. For industries, I also worked in digital health startups, so I can pull from all of that. I've had big budgets, I've had small budgets. I've worked with countries all around the world, so there's no situation too challenging for me to think about how do we create a solution that works for this company. And at Teva, it's a completely unique pharmaceutical company compared to where I've worked before. It combines elements of the startup world because it's very entrepreneurial. The company itself was really derived by a lot of different startups over the years. And they encourage that entrepreneurialism. So quite different than Big Pharma. Big Pharma has its benefits, Teva has its pros and cons, and I find each situation quite unique.
Where do you see the challenges now compared to where you see the challenges in the next 9 to 12 months?
Well, one challenge that I see now that will continue for the next 9 to 12 months, because I don't think that we're going to crack it, is the fact that with the rise of consumerism, the expectation and the benchmark for healthcare has shifted. HCPs are consumers, we are consumers, patients are consumers, everyone's a consumer, and they're engaging with other industries who have improved and the customer experiences that they're providing all of us as consumers. So no longer I'm an HCP, I'm wearing the healthcare hat, and I'm going to lower my bar for how you're going to engage with me as a pharmaceutical company. That's not going to stick any longer, and I don't think that that's going to be accepted much longer. Especially on the consumer side, they want a personalized experience, right place, right time that they're looking for, just like you would as a consumer. It's frustrating if you get served up content that is completely irrelevant to you, or it's a one-size-fits-all communication or engagement. So I think that bar is much higher, and I think as an industry we need to level up our benchmark and think about how can we best engage all of our stakeholders, consumers, patients, HCPs, pharmacists.
So my leading question to that will be, how do you level up? What do you see coming in the not so distant future?
I think that there's some really easy things that we can do. And this is taking learnings from outside the industry and say fast-moving consumer goods. We can become consumer obsessed. And when I say consumer, I mean patient, I mean HCP, and I mean pharmacist. We can do digital safaris. Let's get curious. Let's go and search online. What are they saying? What's the user-generated content from our customer segments or personas that will get us thinking? You know, how would they relate to this solution? How would this change their lives? Let's get more curious. And I think all of us, especially on the commercial side of the business, should be going in the field. We should be engaging with pharmacists. We should be writing with field reps. I make it a point every single quarter at a minimum, I'm in the field in a new market with one of the sales teams, and I encourage my team to do the same.
We're just touching upon a point that now goes into the silos within pharma. And I guess that's a good question to ask you. How are you actively trying to bring those teams together? You talk about every quarter, but obviously you're leading a team as well, and that's medical, that's commercial. How are you making sure that these silos aren't moving apart, especially with the rise of things like AI, where people are going to silo themselves off even more? How are you making sure that you're trying to aim for one vision, and not only that, keeping patient-centric at the same time?
I think, again, I would look outside the industry to bring in some learnings from the consumer, from the fast-moving consumer goods industry. Firstly, the way that they organize marketing as the quarterback or the point guard of leading brands, leading launches is key. They are tasked with leading cross-functional teams across all functions: finance, sales, medical affairs if it's applicable, market access. We need to take the same approach in pharma. It works. And you need one person leading and guiding a brand or a launch. And that person is charged with unifying the team with joint KPIs, joint objectives. Well, each team member has their own clear role and responsibility from a RACI perspective, or a roles and responsibilities perspective.
With the rise of data, how do you see the future of pharma changing, and how are you trying to change it as well?
I think I've seen quoted externally that data is the new oil. It is, a fascinating currency, and it's a critical foundational element for all industries. And I think that we can take some lessons outside the industry, as I always do in pharma, and we've got to build first a solid data foundation. I think there's a lot of noise and buzz around cool stuff like AI, Gen AI, all the different tools, and they're shiny. But how do we actually apply them? Firstly, you've got to have a solid data foundation. You have to have your data in one place. It has to be high quality, clean data about your customers, about your commercial performance. And only then can you start to understand from that data any sort of insights about your customer or how your business is performing. Those insights are hugely valuable. And we've got to have a curious mindset to dig into the data to understand what's happening. Now, AI can help us with that. Once we have the clean data source, we can layer on some great analytics, leveraging machine learning or large language models to actually understand and decipher the insights from the data. And then that needs to be applied. So what do we do with that? What are the implications? Firstly, we need to feed it into more personalized experiences for our customers. That's a win-win. It improves the customer experience for them, and potentially it increases P&L impact for us, right? If we're more efficient, if we're driving a higher turnover of products, that's a win-win. And then we need to learn from that, right? So we create personalized content. How did they engage? Did it work? Did it not work? We feed those learnings back in. It's an evergreen learning cycle with regards to any sort of external engagement.
You talk about shiny things. I love this. This kind of term that's being coined, these shiny things. But what is the danger of them right now? As we're the early adopters of them in pharma, what are the dangers, and what should we be cautious of as we're starting to learn this new world we're coming into?
Firstly, we shouldn't be afraid. I think technology, we should need to embrace it. This is how we're going to be agile as a species and survive. And this industry 5.0 human AI interaction, we need to evolve and we need to experiment. but you're right, we need to do it in a responsible way so that we strengthen society and not destroy it. So firstly, we know what we know today based on the regulations externally, and most companies have some policies in place. We know, for example, if you're using external tools like ChatGPT, we don't know where your data is stored or how it's being used. So that is a risk. And at my company, at Teva, we make sure that our employees are aware of that risk. And there are ways to get around it. Anonymize the data, for one, so it can't be tracked back to you or the company. You can also create tools internally, like Microsoft Copilot, which is safe, it's secure, it's using your own company data, but it operates in a way like ChatGPT externally. So that is one way that is practical to get our employees excited and started on the AI journey in a safe and responsible way. And of course, that human component is key to reducing risk in other elements. So we need to be reviewing any output that's coming from a generative AI tool. For accuracy, does this make sense? Is it logical? Is it biased? Do we think this would be compliant from a legal or privacy or compliance perspective?
So there goes to my another question, which is, do you see compliance as a barrier, or do you see it for something that is integral for the next couple of years we're moving into with the rise of AI and shiny objects?
I don't see compliance as a barrier. I think behind compliance are people. And if you have a good collaborative working relationship and everyone wants to work towards a solution that impacts the business, but it's actually compliant, I think there's a way forward. We're all learning at the same time, so I don't expect policies are going to stay consistent for long. Any sort of guidelines coming out will change, and we have to be okay with that. In my case, we have worked with legal and IT and our cross-functional partners to develop guidance on how to safely use AI at Teva and mitigate risk. And we've rolled that out on the commercial side of the business. And we've empowered our teams to learn and to experiment in a safe and responsible way. I think what's challenging is when companies refuse to move forward with any sort of guidance and stay silent, because employees will experiment whether you like it or not. So it's best to be on the side of guiding them than letting them experiment with ChatGPT with no guidance at all.
How do we make sure that we are being responsible with the failing fast culture, which I think is brilliant, but there needs to be some responsibility from leaders like yourself to make sure a workforce doesn't just go off in every single direction? Where's the boundary around that, and how do you make sure that you're leading the team in the right way and that is responsible to not only your customers but also patients as well?
Sure. I think firstly, the word failure, not a fan. I call it learning. So anytime it could be perceived as a failure, to me, it's a learning. But the point on learning fast is critical. And you can only do that if you're monitoring, measuring, and looking at the data to see if it's working or not. So I think that's a critical element of this digital age of AI, is that we're looking quickly at the leading indicators on, is this performing or not? And let's pivot and let's edit our direction to make sure that it does perform better. And let's learn from that. So it's an evergreen learning loop for me, always, on any topic. I think going off in different directions on shiny objects, and I think that's the risk when we think technology first, not business case and people problems first. So as leaders, everything that we frame up needs to be rooted, one, in our team purposes and strategies, and secondly, on what, either problems we're trying to solve with the business or a human, could be an internal employee or an external customer, and or opportunities. So it's not always a problem, but what are the opportunities that we can address with the use of technology used in a smart, focused way? If we just experiment with all the shiny objects with no direction and no business case, no use for a business problem or a human problem, then you're absolutely right. It's disjointed and we don't get the solid learnings or business impact that we're seeking.
Tell me a little bit about your AI strategy for commercial.
So I think, AI for commercial is firstly rooted in data. So data isn't as fun to talk about. It's not a shiny object, but if you don't have it, you don't have the roots of your tree, you don't have the trunk of your tree to drive any sort of business growth. So what I mean by data first is a solid data foundation. You've got your data in one place for customers. For commercial, it's clean data, it's high quality data, and it's consolidated in something like a data lake or a data warehouse. Then from there, you can start thinking about AI. And AI is a very broad discipline, 8 to 10 different types of disciplines that can, depending on who is using the data, can be crafted in solutions that really, address a business problem or a human problem. And then from there, it starts with people. So for us, we're all about empowering our people to build these sustainable, long-lasting customer relationships and businesses for today and tomorrow. So everything we do with data and AI goes back to solving human problems or business problems.
How are you making sure that sustainability is at the front of the agenda? And I guess, how can marketing do more?
One, I do believe that marketers and agencies play a huge role in sustainability and being responsible as marketers and helping on the commercial side of our businesses. Now, I think the challenge is, if you think about transformation organizations, there's only so much transformation organizations can absorb at one time. So for those companies that are earlier in the digital transformation era, to then couple on top of that sustainability on the commercial side is a challenge. There's just only so many topics we can focus on. So I think in reality, more advanced companies on the digital front are more prepped and ready to take action with regards to sustainability. And you see this a lot outside the industry. You see this in consumer healthcare, you see it in fast-moving consumer goods. Pharma is a little bit farther behind on the digital transformation agenda and hence on sustainability. But there's certainly practical things that we can do. So firstly, when we think about production, when we think about producing assets, there are ways to do that with AI that can actually reduce our carbon footprint. And we should be thinking about that and having those conversations with our agencies, whether they're internal agencies or external agencies, to do it in a smarter way. So, I think that another key area in sustainability that our marketers can start addressing are things around planet. So, in many times, marketers are controlling packaging choices, right? And how that shows up. And so making sure from the beginning, from the origin of launching a product, we're choosing sustainable materials. It's a lot easier than changing packaging later on. So that is a key area that we can work with our package engineers to resolve. Now, another key area related to sustainability that's very dear to my heart because it is very much connected to marketing is creating brand purposes. Now, this doesn't relate to every brand, and you shouldn't force fit a brand purpose. It really needs to be innate to the insights and the authenticity of a brand. And I've driven this exercise at other companies before. For brands where it makes sense to develop a brand purpose, why does a brand exist in a much bigger way as a North Star for guiding choices? You can then start to explore territory where you're giving back and you're activating that brand purpose through cause activations locally to really drive impact on people or planet with causes that are near and connected to that brand's purpose. So an example would be partnering with a certain nonprofit and a certain market that is an extenuation of that brand purpose from a strategic perspective.
Awesome. That's what we've got time for.
Okay.
That is it. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure. We could go on and on and on, and I'm sure maybe we'll do another interview in 2 years' time and see how much has changed. But thank you for joining me.
Great. Thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure.
3, 2, 1.
I could label the last 3 years as one of the most interesting in my career. I am really witnessing more and more willingness of people to evolve, to develop, and to move forward.
What makes a good agency pitch when they come to you?